So today we have a little bit of a logic topic. So I'm going to switch the screens over while I'm talking, but we're going to get right into the first topic, and then I'm going to talk about my game. And after that, we will have a random drawing, which we haven't had in a while. So you have that to look forward to. But I'm going to switch over to the math background. I'm not sure what that thing is down in the corner. Is that the webcam? No, that's yeah, okay. That was from back with my previous game. I think I had it up so that you could see what was going on while I was talking about the topic for the day. So now you can see I have the paint window up on the screen. And I'm going to switch out my mouses so that I can use the drawing tablet. And also I lowered the volume on the system sounds because they're awfully obnoxious when you're trying to switch out USB ports and then you're streaming because they're extremely loud. So we have kind of a simple topic to talk about today, but it's something that I feel like a lot of people don't really think about on a daily basis. That's probably because they're normal, but maybe this is something that will pique your interest and you'll be able to explore it further with your own investigation. So I'm going to start drawing a chart here, but I'm going to try and introduce what I'm talking about while we go. So basically, when you start a geometry class or some sort of logic and proof class with math, there is a simple argument, it's a concept that is initially introduced to you. I actually talked about this in my philosophy class at college for my gen eds as well. So it's not necessarily strictly a math topic, but because it was somewhat math related, just because math is logical in general, I decided to use the math background just because it seemed more fitting than the paint background with the dragon and the paintbrush. So what we're talking about is a conditional argument. And so what a conditional argument is, I am completely shanking this word, conditional argument. So what it means to be a conditional argument is that, so it doesn't necessarily have to fill this exact format, but this is what we usually think of a conditional argument being. And so this argument is if blank, then blank. So these blanks have names. The if clause is the hypothesis, and the then clause is the conclusion. So if something hypothesized happens, then something will happen because of that, and that is your conclusion. So this is the general format that we're working with, but there's a lot of things we can play around with this. So that's why I made this chart. So what we're going to do is this is going to be the negation column, and this is going to be the flip column. These will make sense in a second, but I'm going to put a line here and a line here. So this is the negate rows, sorry. So we're going to say yes negated and no to negated, and we're going to put yes flipped over here and no flipped over here, just so we have both of the yeses, the no's right here in this corner and both the yeses over here. It might seem somewhat backwards, but so what we're going to be talking about is the statement if P, then Q. So basically our P here is our hypothesis and our Q is the conclusion. So what we can do with this is we can check out to see, so let's say that the original statement, if P then Q, was correct. or true, then there's some things we can check to see if the other orientations of those statements are true. And if they are, or if they aren't, we can learn a little bit more about that statement. So the original is not negated and not flipped. So we're going to write that here. This is going to be called the conditional. Just because it's the original conditional argument that we were talking about. So this is if P, then Q. I'll put a little tail there to get a little bit more differentiation. So then, so we're just going to populate the rest of this table. So what happens if we flip this around? And by flipping it around, I mean if Q, then I realized I just wrote the right there. So then P. So this is actually called the converse of the statement. So this is a converse statement compared to this original conditional statement. So we'll get into some examples of this in a second, but I'm just trying to populate the table for right now. So we can look at what would happen if we negated the original statement. So that would mean if not P, then I keep leaving out letters and then not Q. And then our last one, okay, I'll give you the name of this one. This is the inverse. So that might make sense to you guys off the top of your head. Inverse usually means the opposite. So what we're doing is the opposite of the original statement. Not P and not Q. And then one word that I simply love, and I don't know that I use it that often in everyday conversation, but I try to use words that I like in everyday conversation. This word is contrapositive. So the contrapositive of the original, I left out so many letters. Sitive. Alright. The contrapositive of the original statement is to do both the flip and the negation. So if we have if not Q, then not P. So I realize that now that I've written this out, if someone were to look at this, they probably wouldn't be able to actually read it. So I'm going to try and clean it up. But we can get into some actual examples. So if we start out with the conditional, let's go with a great example in geometry of squares and rectangles. So let's pick a true statement for our conditional. If an object is a square, then it is a rectangle. So our P in this situation is an object is a square, or if is a square, that's our P, that's our hypothesis. And then our Q is a rectangle. So if it is a square, it is a rectangle, or then it is a rectangle. So that's our conditional. So then we can look at some of the other situations here. So let's just see if these other orientations are also true. So if we look at the converse, if something is a rectangle, then it is a square. Well, that's not always true, because a square is a small subset of all rectangles. So because it is incorporated in rectangles doesn't necessarily mean that all rectangles are squares. So if we look at the inverse, if the object is not a square, then it is not a rectangle. Now, that might seem true at first glance, but really it's not. So if you don't have a square, you could still have something that is a rectangle, but perhaps has one larger side than the other in terms of length versus width. And then we have our final one, the contrapositive, which is saying if the object is not a rectangle, then the object is not a square. So this is true. And what you'll find is that the diagonals of this table are always true at the same time, and always false at the same time. So if the inverse is false, then the converse is false. If the conditional is true, then the contrapositive is true. So that showed up in our example, but let's do a couple more examples. So one good example is if it is raining, then the grass is wet. So if it's raining outside in the yard, the grass is wet. So our hypothetical or our hypothesis is if it is raining, and our conclusion is then the grass is wet. So if we look at the converse, then that would mean if the grass is wet, then it is raining. So that doesn't necessarily always hold true. Perhaps the sprinklers are on. Perhaps I don't know. The river diverted into your yard. Something like that. But there's other situations where the grass could be wet, but it's not necessarily raining. So if we look at the inverse, then if it is not raining, then the grass is not wet. Well, this logically also is false, because we could also have a different situation where rain isn't the cause of the grass being wet, but the grass still becomes wet. And so the contrapositive, if the grass is not wet outside, then it is not raining. Now, you could make some bold arguments and say perhaps someone laid a tarp out in front of, on top of the yard, and it's protecting the grass. But we're trying to think of a pure environment here. So you have to remember that these usually apply in simple logical arguments. So if we have a lot of factors, then there becomes a lot more of a gray area. So that's the general concept. I don't know if there's any questions about that in the chat, but that's basically what these are. So I'll go over once again in case you can't read my handwriting. The conditional is the original statement. Usually we try and pick a true conditional, but if the conditional is false, then the contrapositive is also false. So I could give an example of that. If let's say we have an equation. If the equation is 2 plus 2, then it is equal to 4. So let's say that this is a false statement. If the equation is 2 plus 2, then the equation is equal to 5. That would be false. So if we look at the contrapositive, then if the equation is not equal to 5, then the equation is not 2 plus 2. That is also false. It could be false. So it also could be true in the sense that you could have an equation that is not equal to 5 and is also not 2 plus 2. But to claim that that statement is true would be false. So that's what we're getting at. I don't want to drag this out too much, but I hope this was helpful in learning some logical arguments. I am going to switch over to talk about my game a little bit, so I hope you guys will stick around. But I won't be needing the paint window, so I'm going to switch my mouse out with my drawing tablet so that I can use the mouse for ease of, I don't know. I have my game running in the background, actually. I believe, yes, it is running. Okay, so I'm going to switch the screens over so you can see it. And I decided to go with kind of a gamer setup here with it up in the window, up in the corner, just so you can get more of a visualization of the game itself and not my face. So you'll notice right off the bat there is almost nothing here. And to top it off, I'm using the character from my previous game just to simplify things because I want to get the mechanics working before I actually start populating the game with art. But I will show you that you can move around in this. So now there is something slightly different from the previous game in terms of how the person is moving. The actual movement itself is exactly the same. I literally copy and pasted all of the main character into the new game just to get something to debug stuff with. But there is actually no walls in this game. So there is no situation where the character will get to the right or the left of the screen or the top or the bottom. The character always stays in the middle, which actually makes it a little bit simpler on me, but also it kind of alludes to the fact that this will be a very large landscape. So this requires some more attention in terms of how I will handle different situations. So with how many things are going to be on the map, I have to have some sort of buffer system. So in the previous game, there was a buffer system. If something wasn't on the screen, I wasn't printing it to the screen because that takes up time. But in this situation, there may be also some processes that would normally go on in the background if you are in that area, but I will not be running those processes. I don't know. There's probably going to be some timers that need to continue, perhaps if you're on a quest or something and you need to do something in a certain amount of time, or if you have to wait for something to refresh, then those timers will be continuing, but they don't take up too much time. In terms of collisions and checking what you could possibly interact with on the screen, that kind of stuff will not need to be run when you are not in that area. So what that means is I'm doing this completely object oriented. So I have built up, and you may have seen from my previous video, if you want to go check that out for more details of the actual code itself. But I have, so you'll see this big white, I believe it's actually a square and not just a rectangle. You'll have this big white square, and this is what I'm calling an area. So this is essentially a chunk that will be loaded when you are in it. So I can add a second area to the right here. I'm not going to do it on screen just because I don't want you guys sitting around while I'm coding. But I have this rectangle on the screen that I can move in and out of. So this eventually is going to be the start building that you begin your journey in. If you ever played my original version of this game, you might know a little bit of what the story is in terms of how the start building goes, but I'm not going to give any significant details for right now. I'm just going to show you. So basically what I have to do before I get into the actual gameplay is I have to set up collisions, which I am working on, but I was having a little bit of trouble with just the way I'm trying to set it up, because what I want the collision engine for the buildings to also tell me is whether you're inside the building. So basically, in a normal situation, if you're inside the building, that's bad, because assuming that you're not going through the door, then I want there to be a solid wall there that you can't get through. But then I need a separate situation for the doors. So if there's going to be a door that you go through, then that needs to allow you through the walls. Now, there are game engines that kind of handle all of this for you, but I kind of feel more confident in how I can apply things if I build them myself. So I am using Pygame as the game engine to print things to the screen, but after that, that's pretty much it. So in terms of images, that's all Pygame is handling right now, and also the events. So when I press things on the keyboard, I want things to happen. So I'm using Pygame for that. That's just something that I don't necessarily have the talent, nor could I be bothered to learn for right now, at least. And I believe it's something that's not even handled in Python. It's probably handled in C or C++, and then just piped to Python for my convenience. Yeah, so right now I have, in terms of the objects that can be worked with, I have an area, which is the main large object, which is this big white rectangle that you can see surrounded by tan. And then I have, from then on, I have objects, interactables, and then I just recently added walls and doors as objects. I was just going to kind of work them into the rooms, but I decided that it might be nice for the walls to kind of handle their own stuff, and then and the doors to interact with the walls so that they can. The door just needs to know where it is, as opposed to the wall knowing that there's a bunch of doors on it. So what's cool about the way I'm doing it is I can keep track of a lot more than what I would originally do, or at least it's a lot more organized. So I can what I can do is I can have a door, and that door can remember what rooms it goes in between. So if it goes from outside to room 0, then that's an important idea, because then I need to stop projecting what is outside and start projecting what is inside the building. And specifically room 0 in that case. So this is area 0 with building 0, and then so on in the area there can be objects and interactables, and also I could probably throw in some walls and some doors, but I don't think that would be too important. Usually there's going to be a building if there is walls and doors. So, but that's the beauty of the object-oriented side of it, is that I could throw those in and it wouldn't necessarily mess things up or require a lot more coding. So then there can be buildings inside the areas, and the buildings themselves are like smaller areas. So there's initially a wall you can't get through, but if you go through one of the doors, then you enter a room, which I should correct myself, the rooms are much more like smaller areas. So the room could have a bunch of objects, interactables, and doors. It has walls as well, so the walls don't allow you to get out unless you go through a door. But let's say for some reason there were 4 rooms in here. The way I'm planning to do this is to not project all 4 of those rooms at once. I'm only going to show you the room that you're in. So if you were in this upper left quadrant, and that was one room, and then there's a door over here, you could move through that, and as you pass through the door, the visualization of what area you have to move around in would switch from this left quadrant to this right quadrant. So that's kind of the idea I'm going for. There may be some situations where I need to show you 2 rooms at once, but perhaps I could just consider those as the same room, and then just make walls around them in accordance to that with doors, so that you can't necessarily get from one to the other. I think that might be interesting for some story things, or just for some random stuff. If you like walked into a room and then saw something happening across the street, that might be interesting. So there are ways to work around that, because I can just consider them the same room, just spread it out, and it has its way of working things out. I am planning to make a shorter character when I do the art for this. I said do. Perhaps something that is about half the height of this soccer mom lady right now, just because I don't necessarily want to deal with... it will save a lot of time if I only have to deal with 1 pixel being over the border for it to be a collision. In the current situation, there's kind of like a aura around the person that is like where that person would collide with something. And like when you walk up here, there's no verticality out of the wall, because we have this weird flattened 3/4 view. So if I want that to be workable, then perhaps I could do something on the art side with the drawing. I could just make it so that you see walls at a flattened 3/4 view, but it's something I'm messing around with. So I don't know how that's gonna play out, but we'll see when it comes around to it. And the beauty of this is that the building itself isn't just on this white square that I'm projecting to the screen. It's its own thing. So I could change its shape, I could change its anything, and it wouldn't necessarily mess up anything around it, assuming that I'm not just making it gigantic and overlapping with a bunch of other things that I have printed to the screen. So The next big step is collisions and doors. Once those are set in, I can start working on the actual objects and interactables, which will be a little bit more complex in terms of collisions, assuming that there are collisions with these objects and interactables. But I think that will be something that will be like I can turn that on and off. So there might be something that you can walk through, or perhaps if there's an animal, I don't necessarily want it to obstruct your path if I had it moving around randomly, because then technically you could get stuck in an area because an animal closed you off. But I don't know. I'm gonna mess around with stuff. But for now, I'm pretty happy with the fact that I was having a problem earlier where not it was recognizing and printing to the screen with the correct orientation, but then its recognition of what area I was in was shifted. So this was the corner up here of the white rectangle in terms of what was going on the back end. And that's really annoying because it wasn't the visual thing that was messed up, it was something else. And I ended up fixing it, but it can get aggravating sometimes. So that's pretty much all I've done so far. It's hard to show a lot of what I've done when most of it's been on the skeleton side. But the cool thing about object-oriented programming is once I get all the skeletons set up, the speed at which I can output new material will be significantly larger. Much like how a lot of people use game engines because a lot of the coding has already been done, I'm essentially setting up my own engine just with Pygame as the platform for that game engine. So that's pretty much all I have to talk about my game. I don't want to drag on too much, but I hope you guys are excited, and I am planning to try and get something out as soon as it doesn't look as bad as this. So, like I said, I'm trying to get a lot of the back end stuff going, so I can't work too much on the visual stuff. But I want to. I have the itch.io page up, so if you go check that out, you can get a little bit more detail, and just keep an eye on it for when I post the first thing. I'm sure I'll post on Facebook about it when I upload the first update to it. But I guess from here on, I'm just gonna go to my random drawing. So I'm going to switch the screens over, and we'll get paint going. And I actually need to get the sheet out because I haven't used it in so long. There we go. It's been quite a while since we used this sheet. I have a pencil so I can cross out the words, and I have my random number generator. I'm not sure why that is not paint, but we'll get that fixed. No, I want this to be paint. Okay. Did it not? It didn't change. Okay. I'm not sure what's going on there. We're gonna have to work around this. So, okay. I did have it set as paint, but I didn't have paint as the front one. So, all right. We're gonna clear this out, and we will get into the random number generation. Now, it's been a while, so I'm gonna update you guys. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that have already been used. So that's out of 25. So I'm going to pick a random number between 1 and 19. And hold on, I'm going to. Sorry, there's a couple people just walked in. So 1 through 19. Our first number is 18, which will be shifted down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to Harambe. Great. That's our noun. And I'll hit another one. We have 17, which will be shifted down 1, 2, 3, or that's 2 still, and then 1, 2. This is kind of confusing. So the 17th one down. So if I'm here, that's 14, that's 15, 16, 17. All right. Barrage. Dear God, this isn't really going very well. And our last one is 2, which is bumpy. So that's great. Let me switch the mice around again. And we have Harambe on a bumpy barrage. So let's think of something that would be bumpy that you could barrage something with. Perhaps a. I'm trying to think of something that's not normal bumpy. Perhaps a pineapple. Um, so I think that's what we'll go with. So we're gonna have a building here, and this is going to be important later. So we'll put a sign up here for the top of the building, and then we're gonna I'll explain that one later. So this is just a normal cube or some sort of rectangular prism inclusive of cubes. And then we're going to have Harambe here, and he is going to he's going to have something in his hand here. So now we need to think of something bumpy. What I'm thinking is a pineapple. So pineapples aren't, I don't know if you would consider them bumpy. They are definitely spiny, but I think that a spine is a collective piece of the bumpy family. So I'm not the best at drawing gorillas, but I would imagine they gotta be somewhat human-like. So they got ears. They have ears. That's important. So I'm just gonna draw this in a little bit, and then we'll get some differentiation in tone. And I think you guys get the picture, though. So if we have a hand here, and gorillas do have 5 fingers, that's an important idea. And then we're just gonna draw a pineapple. And so if we draw this pineapple out, we might add some coloration in. So if we get the orangish color, I'm probably gonna mix it up between layers. So we're gonna color these layers in orange. It's starting to get dark. Might add some lighting in here. Is that better? That's better. Okay, so we'll get some coloration in here, and then some greens up here at the top, and our final picture here is going to be Harambe lobbing this pineapple at the NRA. So that's pretty much a complete picture, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys enjoyed the entire stream, for that matter, because this is the first time that I have done a full-length stream in a very long time. I just haven't really had things to talk about, but what I am going to talk about soon to come, I talked to my girlfriend about this, and I do want to do kind of a series on programming basics. Now, I have done a video on programming basics before. I might put a link to it up in the corner right now. But the idea is that I'm going to try to teach her the basics, at least conceptually. I don't know about actually programming. I mean, I can put it up on the screen pretty easily, so I might have her try something out. But basically, we're gonna go over for loops, if statements, while loops, just the general basics of coding, and try to make it educational. But what's good about having my girlfriend on is she's pretty good about asking the questions that someone who doesn't necessarily know programming might be asking. So if I do that, then I feel like it might be more comprehensive in terms of all of the topics I cover and how thoroughly I cover the topics. I had her on for the talk about thermodynamics, and she's been on for a couple of the tax episodes, which I need to get back onto. It's just kind of a weird scheduling thing with everybody on summer. But if that sounds like an interesting idea for you guys, then let me know. I do plan on doing it, but I like to know what kind of topics you want to hear about. So that's pretty much all for this stream. I want to thank you guys for watching. I actually have to switch the mouse out back in so that I can turn the stream off. But I don't know if I'm going to be streaming tomorrow. I do have a baby shower I have to go to, or get to go to. I'm planning on enjoying it. But I'll let you know if you keep your eye out on Facebook, or if you're subscribed, then you will probably be notified of when I go live. Then you will know. But if you are not, then if you're not looking on Facebook, or if you're not subscribed, then I don't know how you're going to know, but you know, that's kind of your choice. So I'm rambling. I'm going to sign off, but thank you guys for watching, and goodbye.